Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, new viewers. The world is watching Maverick News, and we appreciate you guys stopping by tonight to join us. And when I say us, I mean myself, and Lori will be along shortly to join this broadcast. We have a special guest again joining us for a second time, Kevin Michelizzi. He's a cyber security expert, specialist, journalist, political analyst living in Russia right now. He's going to give us the lay of the land, an assessment of what things are like in Russia tonight, live, after all of this, whatever you want to call it, rebellion, mutiny, strange development, quirky stuff, the Wagner, convoy to the Russian capital that kind of fizzled out. Anyway, he's going to talk about that. We'll also, I'm sure, dive into international politics, and we'll be talking about this crazy situation in France where the country is literally burning, not just forests, but like cities. Some people think that this is actually some sort of almost like it looks to me almost like a color revolution, some sort of it's probably closer to a coup than what we saw in Russia. And that looked like a coup for a while, but then it turned out to be, I don't know what it was. Maybe Kevin can shed more light on it when he joins us a little later in the broadcast. We'll look at what's happening in Ottawa today on this Canada Day, July 1st. A lot of attention focused on the nation's capital in Canada, not just Canadians looking, but the whole world, really. And in part because of what we talked about last night with Adrian the Realist, who had some supporters there ready to raise his swastika flag on Parliament Hill. We'll talk a little bit about that. What else do we have? We have lots of video out of France tonight, where they've arrested over 1,300 people, by the way, and what has turned out to be a fourth night of protests there. Some people saying it's like their George Floyd moment, but it seems to be something bigger than that. And what we're going to do right now, actually, well, maybe in a minute. No, that's okay. Hang on. I'm just a little confused here, but I've got things back on track. So yeah, we'll take you to the capital of Canada, talk about what's been happening up there. And I know you don't want to hear from him, but we will run a little clip from the Prime Minister. He did get up on stage and talk. That's his job. Well, part of his job anyway. Our lead story tonight, the one in the thumbnail and the headline of the program, there's irony here, and it's sad irony, but the owner of Vancouver's very controversial The Drugs Store, and I apologize, the one thumbnail that we had, which did not properly update, it's missing an S on the end of drug, but it's The Drugs Store. He's died. He's passed away from a drug overdose. This is the guy who set up his own, like it's literally a drug store where they sell hard drugs, illicit drugs in Vancouver, British Columbia. We have that story tonight. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And then fast forward a couple of hours from now, 8 o'clock. And we're going to keep this whole broadcast rolling. At 8 p.m., we switch over to the premiere episode. Well, it's actually the fifth episode of this series that Lori has put together. It's called Strange Bedfellows. It is a political show. And I'm sure everyone knows that phrase. Politics makes strange bedfellows. Well, she has a strange bedfellow tonight in the form of Mega Maga Man, the ultimate Donald Trump fan. And I can say that Lori is probably the biggest Robert F. Kennedy Jr. fan that I know. Maybe the biggest booster of RFK Jr. today. I don't know. She's a pretty big one. And we have a guy he's got all the Trump paraphernalia. He's got a Trump bathroom. He's got all the collectibles, the flags, the clothes. He's like, I call him Mega Maga Man. And he was supposed to be on the show about 2 weeks ago, and that didn't quite work out. 2 weeks? Yeah, approximately. Anyway, he is going to be here tonight at 8 p.m., and we'll roll right into the first Maverick News Network episode of Strange Bedfellows. So that'll be an interesting show for you, because you're going to have a Trumper and a RFK Jr. person, and they're going to go head to head. And I think it's going to be fun. And there will probably be a lot of humor injected into that too. So looking forward to that. Don't go away. When we come back, we'll get into our lead story, the death of Vancouver's the drugs store owner.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so first up tonight, before we get to the Canada Day stuff, I'm old, so I'm pretty conservative, I guess, and maybe a little curmudgeon-y, but maybe I'm just a little stuck in my ways. But I've had a hard time accepting this new approach to dealing with hard drugs, especially, the way they're doing it out in British Columbia, where they have decriminalized hard drugs, but they have not legalized the sale of hard drugs. Now, there was a man who opened the first store in Canada openly selling heroin, cocaine, meth, and MDMA. Jerry Martin had a brother who passed away from a drug overdose, as I understand it. And his goal was to open this place he calls the drugs store in Vancouver, selling hard drugs that are I guess, from reliable sources, drugs that are, not cut with other ingredients, that they're clean, that they aren't contaminated. And also, his objective, I guess, was to sell these drugs, or so he says, in a controlled way so that people didn't get too much and maybe help people who are addicted avoid overdosing. So I don't know what the right word is to use here to be sensitive about this. Jerry Martin has now died of an overdose. He originally survived the overdose, but he was taken to hospital. He was unresponsive in hospital, and then his family eventually decided to take him off life support. His wife, Krista Thomas, was there to make that decision. Martin, 51 years old, believed that people were self-medicating their trauma, and so long as they were doing that, they needed a safe supply to do it. That's what his wife said. That was his objective in opening the drugs store. So apparently, Martin overdosed on fentanyl. And we all know that fentanyl is an extremely powerful, a newer drug. And it is a drug that has taken far too many lives. So he opened the drugstore in May. It was a bricks and mortar shop. It was opened, right out in like any other business. But it didn't take long for police to come and arrest him, because even though hard drugs have been decriminalized, selling hard drugs is something police still were frowning upon, and the state, so the government. So yeah, he was open. He was arrested within 24 hours of opening that store, which was located on Vancouver's downtown east side. And, when he opened that store, he was making international headlines, which is why I'm really drawing attention to this evening. And I have to say thank you to Leo as well, who alerted us here at Maverick News to the death of Mr. Martin. Leo informed me early this morning. He became aware of it because Leo is always dialed in, very connected, always aware of what is going on. He has some friends out in Vancouver, and he connected me with someone out there, and we became aware early this morning. And so I did post to social media to break that news. And I think we were, if not the first, one of the first in the world, North America, Canada, certainly, to report this news. And we're one of the first still even tonight, because this story still has not received very much attention. And yet I think it deserves more attention, because Mr. Martin certainly generated a lot of media attention when he first opened his store, as I say. So much so, in fact, that here's an example of a CTV story that was picked up by the Young Turks online and was referencing Vice, all in the space of just a couple of minutes in this report.
Own store, not to sell groceries or clothing, but hard drugs. He's well aware it's a risky move, but hopes his shop will reduce the number of people dying of overdoses.
Jerry Martin is a former drug addict. Now sober, he wants to open up his own brick and mortar shop to sell hard drugs, including heroin, cocaine, and meth.
It takes the extreme to get things done sometimes.
He recently lost his brother due to overdose and says there's a need to provide a safe supply.
A lot of these people, in fact, all of them, they have to take a risk every day where they go get their drugs. They're either going to get something that isn't clean or safe, or they can put themselves in a dangerous situation. There's a lot of predators out there that'll get girls to do things for their drugs, whether they get the money or not, and they'll put them in a situation. And I don't think it's very comfortable for anyone. So they can come in there and not have to worry about that.
Picked up by the Young Turks. And you'll see commentary here.
There's someone trying to start a new business. Hey, it's capitalism, bro. There's a Vancouver man who opened his own drug selling store. right in front of everyone, because he was trying to make sure that people get the right drugs clean and safe, because, you know, he's had his past with it. But by the way, police already shut him down 24 hours after he opened up that store for drug trafficking. Vice News caught up with him. His name is Jerry Martin, and here he is outside of that store. Sorry, I don't want to laugh at this, but he was serious, which, you know what, I gotta give him props. This is what his sign's saying, in case you guys can't see it. Adults only, 18 plus. ID is required. It's very safe and very double-checked location here. Possession limit, 2.5 grams per drug, per purchase, per person. No exceptions, Dara. By the way, if you guys couldn't see that other sign on the ground next to him, you guys can get different leveling prices for cocaine, crack cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and I believe at the bottom it got cut off as MDMA. Bro, you can get all your stuff that you need, move on, have no worry about the way these street drugs just may be laced, may not be what you're looking for, or could be laced with, you know, what everyone's talking about here, all that fentanyl. Dara, what are your thoughts here? I mean, is it something that maybe...
Well, hang on a second here. I have to roll this back because listen to what she says. Listen to this. Hang on. I don't know about this.
Can catch on?
I mean, I admire his entrepreneurship. He's got, you know, he's driven and self-motivated.
Yeah.
I do question where he's getting the drugs from. In the first, I mean, I admire that he's testing them to make sure they're safe, but then I want to know how he's testing them. And like, there's a lot of questions there. That
she admires the entrepreneurship. I don't know. Okay, man. I just, you know, this is like, this is beyond sad. You have a drug addict who loses a brother to an overdose. Government decriminalizes hard drugs, making it easier, I think even more attractive for people to use them, paving the way to even more drug use in society. This guy, who's already a recovering drug addict, opens the drugs store, which is, in my mind, sort of like an alcoholic opening a bar, and then would be around the booze all the time. Now this guy's in a store surrounded by every imaginable kind of drug there is. Availability 24/7. Concerned about fentanyl and contamination of fentanyl or with any of these other drugs. And now tonight, Jerry Martin dead. Drug overdose. Fentanyl himself. This isn't irony. This is just tragedy. And I think it's a statement about where our society has descended to. It's I'm almost speechless because of the stupidity involved in this story. This is just complete, absolute stupidity. Failure of government, failure of social service agencies, failure of the courts, failure of every support mechanism that is supposed to be in place for drug addicts, failure of people themselves, failure of the education system, just failure after failure after failure, which they double down on and expand upon until you get to this point where you've actually got a guy who opened a store to sell illicit drugs because he thought he was doing the right thing, only to end up killing himself inadvertently, apparently, by overdosing on the product that he was selling to other people to prevent them from overdosing or getting drugs that were contaminated and might poison them, essentially. The madness of this. And to be reporting on this on Canada Day seems far too appropriate. It's just one more, and I guess you used the word ironic, statement. Another stain, really, on Canada. on this Canada Day. I feel bad for him. I feel sad for his family. I feel sad for his wife. And yet at the same time, I in my view, people who end up there, it's because of choices they've made too. So people have to learn to take responsibility, personal responsibility for their actions. And when they make bad choices, sometimes they get bad outcomes, bad consequences. But at the same time, I think the messages that are sent to people today with regard to the use of drugs and the way they behave in general, I think it's all very negative. We've lost our moral compass. Of that, I am sure. Morality. Where do you find the path to what is right versus what is wrong today? When God has been taken out of the equation, when up is down and down is up and black is white and white is black, because we have a government that essentially has replaced the church. The state has replaced the church. And they dictate now what is morality, where the virtuous things to get involved with are things like drag queen story time and climate change activism. These are the new religions. It is the new religion. Identity politics, neoliberal wokeism, where drug use, hard drug use, is viewed as being okay. And that you're just a victim if you become addicted. But as far as I'm concerned, our attitude toward it as a society has just devolved. I'm actually disgusted with what I see out there. I do feel for him. He was trapped. And, he was looking for a way out, not just for himself, but for other people, right? He was, I think, trying to help people, but at the same time, profit from it. It leaves me feeling almost helpless, almost hopeless. I don't know what else to say. I'll be right back.
Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
Yeah, these hard drugs, like many things in our society, government sanctioned, they're a trap. People talk about freedom, and you would think that because I'm so freedom oriented that I would sit here and say, hey, do whatever you want, man. Like if you want to do heroin, just go do heroin. You should be free to do it. But I don't think that way. Not when it comes to drugs. Because drugs are addictive. And because they are addictive, so addictive, I view them as a trap. They don't represent freedom. By making them widely available to people, by failing to discourage their use, I think you open the door to the trap. You could argue that people should be free to make the choice to use these drugs that are highly addictive and extremely harmful, physically, emotionally, and even socially. But I say no, because once you're addicted, you're trapped. You become a slave to the drug and to the people or persons selling you the drugs. It enslaves you. It destroys your life. That's not freedom. So I'm not in favor of decriminalizing drugs or legalizing them, not drugs like that. And I'm not in favor of opening stores to sell them to people, and I'm not in favor of safe injection sites. I am in favor of programs to help people get off those drugs and rehabilitate. But the programs we have right now are clearly not working. That's my personal opinion on it. Other people will disagree, and that is fine. And I'm sure that this is a problem that is not going to go away. It will be with us for a long time. Now, yesterday, we had Adrian the Realist on talking about his, well, he calls it a Thunderbird flag. It's a flag that he designed, I guess. It has a swastika on it. I don't like it. That's my opinion. Again, he says it's a First Nations symbol that they are reclaiming, or he wants to reclaim. I acknowledge that. But it was also used by the Nazis in World War II. And it has a very dark history in that regard. And while those who advocate or support his decision to promote the use of this Native American flag with a swastika on it, and the plan was to raise this flag on Parliament Hill today during Canada Day. Well, those who support it say that it's reclaiming Native heritage. I say it is selective history. And it's dangerous selective history because it is normalizing the use of the swastika. And the decision to promote the use of this swastika on this flag involves a conscious decision to simply ignore the use of the swastika during World War II by the Nazis themselves. When people see that, they certainly associate it with Nazi Germany today. And while, yes, people maybe should be more aware of the use of the swastika by other cultures throughout history, especially maybe First Nations here in Canada, Native American, Indigenous people across North America or Turtle Island. Maybe we should be more aware of our history, of Native American history, of the use of the swastika. But it doesn't eliminate, just because it was used in that way in the past doesn't mean that that's not an excuse for ignoring the way it was used by the Nazis. And that is today the most prominent memory that the public has of that symbol, and it is very divisive. It is dark. And by using it, normalizing its use, and telling people that it has positive energy behind it in that way, associating it in that way with people, it muddies the waters around what happened during World War II and the Holocaust. And in my conversation with Adrian last night, I mean, he downplayed the Holocaust and openly acknowledged that he takes issue with Jewish people. You can watch the whole interview. I don't need to tell you again exactly what he said, but you have to watch the whole thing. and where a lot of it, in order to get to the part where he talks about the Jews. I think the use of that symbol is extremely dangerous. And so, of course, I'm opposed to it. I will say, though, that I am a big free speech advocate, and I will defend his right to, or what should be his right. It isn't his right, but it should be his right to express himself with that symbol on a flag if he chooses to, as other people should be allowed to. But police called and told him that 4 different police agencies actually called and spoke to Adrian and said that if any of his supporters brought those flags onto Parliament Hill today, they would be confiscated and potentially arrests would be made. So we've been looking to see what happened up there on Parliament Hill today during the Canada Day celebrations. And what we saw was stuff like this. Hang on, let me just get this video rolling up. This is AC Media.
Welcome to Ottawa. Lines hundreds deep, barely anyone on the hill. Lines both directions, hundreds deep, as they frisk kids. Happy Canada Day.
So that was going on like all day. And we were told, we heard the conversation that that Adrian recorded and then released on, his own decision, of a police officer from Ottawa speaking to him, telling him that his supporters would be going through those checkpoints and they would detect the flags and confiscate them if they were found. And as I say, it was potentially running into some sort of a confrontation up there today. So what happened? Don't know. Adrian said in that conversation that they had as many as 50 flags that would be flown on Parliament Hill today. But as I was watching all day, I did not see any indication of it. So if it happened someplace where it was not seen, not publicized so far. Maybe there's video out there someplace. If anyone has seen it, send it over. I haven't seen anything today to indicate that those flags were raised. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to try to contact Adrian during the course of this broadcast tonight to see if maybe he can fill us in on what happened, because of course a lot of people are very interested, especially after we spent so much time discussing this last night. In the past, like back during the winter when they had that big thing going on out in Winnipeg, he was promising to fly that flag outside the Winnipeg legislature, and I guess they did that, but when they went down, I think there were only about 4 people there, and they did a little thing, but it wasn't very large at all. It was just a small thing that they got on video. And so if they went there today, I would say that those flags were probably taken quickly at those checkpoints and never made it onto the hill. Don't know. Don't know if their ceremony took place or not. We'll find out. I think we'll hear more tomorrow. I checked in with Ottawa Police, and they've not indicated that any arrests have been made with regard to anything that we've been talking about here. So if something happened, it was quite inconsequential, at least so far. And there's the end of that story for today, but I don't think it's the end of the story, period. This is something that will continue to bubble to the surface because Adrian is, I think, determined to do something more with that symbol, as are a lot of other people. And I'll tell you this, simply by having him on the program yesterday, boy, did I come under attack. Yeah, there was a whole army of online people just coming down hard on me for not supporting the use of the swastika. Well, sorry. Not my thing. I've already explained why. I don't need to get into any of that tonight. Enough said. Let's move on. This is a lunar eclipse. So I'm going to show you a video of this. It's a live lunar eclipse that will begin as the moon enters the outer edge of Earth's shadow. And so this type of lunar eclipse is known as a penumbral, meaning that people who watch will be able to see the face of the moon darken without completely disappearing. So this event is happening now. And I'm no expert on this stuff, but this is a pretty cool looking video and it's live. So I'm just going to bring it up because I thought it was cool. And maybe somebody out there knows more about it than I do. I'm sure there are a lot of people who know more about this than me. I'm not doing this for any other reason than I think it looks cool. So that's why I'm showing this to you right now. Because this is like some lunar eclipse thing that's happening that I wasn't even aware of until we just were coming on the air. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. There's the moon and it looks pretty orange. So I'm showing it to you because I think it's cool. And I like that kind of stuff. That's it. And therefore, it is news. People ask, what is news? Well, I'll tell you what the news is around here. It's whatever we decide to put on the screen and talk about. And they keep saying best view, but I don't even know what that means because I don't know. I just don't know because 20 minutes ago or 23 minutes ago, it said best view in 2 minutes. And then it got to be 2 minutes and it didn't look any different to me. So but it's still cool. So there you go. How's that for analysis? There's a layman, non-expert, I don't know anything about this whatsoever commentary on some sort of a lunar eclipse that I can't even pronounce the name of properly. And that is news. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's move on to something that maybe I do know a little bit more about. Go back to Canada Day. So that was the kind of stuff going on Parliament Hill. We showed you people being strip searched again. And yes, there were a lot of people there, some protesters, that's true. But everything seemed to be very peaceful and pretty much all under control. So, yeah, I mean, there were some freedom groups up there, doing their megaphone stuff and waving their signs and spreading their messages. And Maxime Bernier was up there today. He had a few things to say, I guess. But, the big event where the big stage was set up and everything, we had the Governor General. We had people representing First Nations, a huge crowd. And then, of course, Mr. Fancy Socks, JT got up and started to speak as well. I won't torture you too long, but here's our Fancy Socks leader and what he had to say today. We'll just give you a little taste of it.
To the moon.
Oh yeah, there was
Merci aux aînés autochtones pour leur message et leur bénédiction. Merci aux artistes pour leur performance.
What's his name? The astronaut guy.
Je suis très heureux d'être ici en famille pour célébrer avec vous tous.
Canadian astronaut.
Today marks the 156th anniversary of our great country. Some of you have ancestors that were here way before Confederation, and some of you arrived more recently, like the new Canadian citizens we just welcomed. Anthony, Armel, Sylvie, Alric, Anaël, Diane, Nicolas, Jolan or Joshua, Ralph, Jessica, Rana, Hala, Ibrahim, Youssef, Jude, Ghazal. Canada is now officially your home. Welcome, my friends. Bienvenue au Canada, un pays où les différences et la diversité sont célébrées, un pays où on est libre de vie, d'être qui on veut et d'aimer qui on aime, un pays où chacun a une chance réelle et égale de réussir, un pays où on reconnaît les erreurs du passé et où on travaille sans relâche pour bâtir un meilleur avenir pour tout le monde. My friends, the world and our country are facing incredible challenges right now.
No kidding.
War has returned to Europe. Climate change is making extreme weather like wildfires, floods, and hurricanes even worse. Inflation, although it is getting better, is still putting real stress on families.
That's because
no
of
matter
you.
the challenges we face, we will get through it the same way we always do, by staying true to our values.
Values don't fix the economy, dude. Wife, Sophie.
C'est en restant fidèle à qui nous
Sophie.
sommes et à nos valeurs qu'on arrive à
She showed
relever
up.
les défis.
Normally
Des
she's not hanging
valeurs
out with
comme
him.
la compassion, l'engagement et la responsabilité.
He printed too much
Values
money.
like justice, openness, and democracy. That's Canada's advantage in the world now more than ever. Quand on traverse des épreuves.
Okay, enough. Blah, 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 blah. Canada Day. They talk about climate change. I mean, this is the whole thing about Canada Day 2023. At least we had one. I mean, they didn't try to lock us down or at least the Canadian flag wasn't flying at half staff. At least it's flying all the way up the pole today. But there's so much hypocrisy, so much that's literally upside down. He stands up there, talks about climate change. We heard from First Nations leaders who also stood there on the stage today, talked about climate change. Oh, they're so worried about the environment. And yet we have this war going on in Ukraine where they're using depleted uranium in the shells to destroy tanks, which then contaminates the country that we're trying to save with radioactive material that will cause birth defects, cancer, and who knows what other diseases for generations to come. Oh, but they're worried about, the environment. Don't use plastic straws. You can't have a bag when you go to the grocery store. But it's okay to blow crap up in Ukraine. Let's send more weapons to incinerate more buildings and people. Things make no sense. They preach, but what they're really saying is do as I say, not as I do. And they justify their actions just by saying it's okay with information warfare to get you to buy in and to scare you, to manipulate you with other information in order to get you to act in particular ways and even to vote in particular ways. It makes no sense. And there's so much polarization politically in the country. And I don't know where it's going to end. But right now, things don't seem to be on a very positive course. Not at all. You can see the unrest still out there, the discontent. You can feel it. Adrian with his flag. People frustrated because they feel like they don't have a voice at the polls, even though you get a vote. Chris Sky running for mayor and getting 1% of the vote. So there's a portion of the electorate that just feels like they don't count. No, I'm not going to buy into the Chris Sky lost the election because of cheating. He got 1.1%. That's a whole lot of cheating. Okay. No, people just didn't support him. Why? Well, maybe the system isn't fair. That's probably true. Because information, the media is controlled by government. So people are manipulated that way. That's how they influence the vote. And by denying access to debates for certain candidates, by favoring certain candidates and giving, the front runners, the ones they like, more attention than others. But anyway, that's sort of a sidebar. All I can say is Canada is on a collision course with not just unrest, but worse. And I hope it doesn't deteriorate into what we're seeing in France, where again, over 1,300 people have now been arrested after 4 straight nights of protests. And all of this triggered by the fatal police shooting of a teen who was driving in a car. Racism! And the aftermath of this is that cars are being burned in the streets, buildings have been set on fire, stores being looted. We've seen this kind of thing in the United States with the Black Lives Matter riots. We've seen, mostly peaceful protests where business districts have been essentially burned to the ground, car dealerships set ablaze. Well, it's happening in France, and it's happening on a huge scale. So, on such a large scale that some would say this is not just riots. This amounts to essentially maybe some sort of color revolution or something more, some sort of an act of war. This is a video released by the leader of Poland comparing his country with France. Poland. France. Well, is that fair? I don't know, but that's what he released. And then we have this. So apparently the police and the police unions in France have told Macron that they may stand down because they view this as some sort of war, that it's escalated to that point, And these officers are saying that this is beyond what they signed up for. And what we're seeing is the government using a lot of force to repel these riots. And, for every action, you get an equal and opposite reaction, generally speaking. And so that's what we're seeing on the streets of France. Now, I see that our guest, Kevin, is actually, I must have sent the wrong link because he's in the wrong studio. So I have to resend this link to get Kevin and Lori on the program over here. So why don't we take a short break, and I'll take care of all that technical stuff and be right back after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. So while we wait for our guest to arrive, I just want to do this. I'm just going to call Adrian. And we'll ask him what happened with his flag thing today. Hang on, see if he picks up. Stay with me.
I'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you. Bye.
There we go.
Going on over there, and now we're here to destroy that unity between NDP and all that bullcrap. Hey, Rick.
Hey, how are you, sir?
Not bad. How are you?
Good. I'm on the air live. I just wanted to dial in because I didn't see if anything happened up in Ottawa with the flag, and I just wanted to find out if maybe you could tell us what happened with it today.
They risen it in Ottawa at the Parliament building. 31 of those flags have been apprehended currently or taken down. And the Crazy Brotherhood separated the security, and they went up there and risen that flag there. So,
okay, did anyone get arrested?
No, because they got pushed off. We are pretty smart with that aspect. They're supposed to be arresting people, but they got followed out. So they knew that they could not stop it.
I see. So 31
of the flags have been apprehended apparently, or have been taken down. From what I hear, I have to get more information at what's going on from their side, because I had to shut off my phone as I was over here doing meetings.
I see. Okay.
But from that point on, the two women and the Klanswoman went up there, introduced themselves, and they went up there, did the ceremony, and they're not supposed to videotape the ceremony.
Okay.
And then they taken it up to that base because it was unceded territory, so they could not. They had no jurisdiction there. It was the problem of getting to that spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But they did it, and they rose in the flag up there, and that was it. And then they're all happy now. The clan, that's what's going on. So there was a lot of protocol. There's a lot of here and there all over the place. And now this Crazy Brotherhood they're the ones that separated the crowd. So that's good.
The Crazy Brotherhood? Who's that?
The crazy Indian Brotherhood.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so did they raise any of the flags on Parliament Hill?
No, they
None.
were
They got 'em
supposed to. Here's the thing: if they got stopped, the protocol was if they got stopped, they were going to raise all flags. But if they were let through, which they have been, and the cops, as soon as they saw that happening, they kind of pushed themselves away and they kind of walked away on that aspect of it because of the offering that they had with the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that they couldn't go on the ceremonial land or that unceded land. That's how it all started. And then after that, they did their ceremony and they rose their flag, and now they're gone. Now they can't do fuck all about it.
So they did raise a flag, or am I misunderstanding?
Yes.
One.
Yes.
Okay. They rose.
So there you go. They try to stop, but then that was it. They try to keep it as hush hush as they could. But like they said, we wanted to make sure the crowd was off the way while they did it. So
I see.
And it was respectful on both sides. And I take it from the PP, they were respectful as soon as they got there. They probably understood that it was a bigger problem than they anticipated. And that was the negotiation this morning.
I see. Okay.
So,
well,
there you go.
Yeah. All right.
It was a victory for all of us.
All right. I understand that you're busy there, so I won't keep you, but thank you for bringing us up to date on that.
You're welcome, my friend. You have yourself a good day.
Okay, you too. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, so I hope you guys could have heard that. So let me just check. Could you guys hear it okay? Could you hear that? And what I just got there? I guess so. I think so. All right. So that's what happened, I guess, on Parliament Hill today. One flag risen with the swastika on it. Whatever side of the issue you're on, that's just what happened, according to Adrian, and no video taken because they didn't want to videotape the ceremony. 31 other flags confiscated by parliamentary police at those checkpoints that we showed you earlier. And that's where things stand right now. And I see now Lori is in the wrong studio because I sent you the wrong link, Lori. So when you hear this, and I hope that you are monitoring this, I sent you a new link in by email, and I will send it to you by private chat in the studio that you are in right now as well. Hang on just a second. Really sorry, but setting things up tonight was technically more complicated than normal. So here I am. Now I have echo in my head. Reverb. And here's the private chat. Okay. There's the link. Okay. This is really weird. I don't know if, hello, Lori. I know you're not in the one broadcast, you're in the other one, but I don't know if you can hear me or not. Probably not. This is, okay. Get out of that studio. Go to the other one. I sent you a link. There we go. Okay, I'm going to close this off now. I think that she got me. Okay, so she's going to come in. Here we go. Now we're in the right place. All right.
Oh, hi.
There.
Looks like I came to the right place finally.
Yeah. We're multi-streaming on different platforms, and it's crazy. You don't understand at home, folks. But Lori was off in the cyber universe.
I was
someplace.
talking to myself in the studio all alone going, where's Rick?
Cyber Twilight.
Where the heck is everybody? So does that mean I sent the wrong link to our friend Kevin in Crimea? Do I need to resend it?
Yeah. Yes.
And Paul too, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
I expect so. Sorry.
Can you gab for a few minutes while I do that? And I'll be right back.
I've been doing that since before you got here, so I'll just keep on flapping my gums.
You just keep flapping those lips, Walker. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. Oh, more video out of France, and this will help tee up, I think, what we will probably end up talking about when Kevin joins us as well. You know, you can't tell me this is just about one teenager being shot in a car by cops. There's more that generates this. There's more that causes this kind of unrest than just that. I mean, there's history behind it, of course, but there's also politics, you know, definitely politics. Hang on. I'm going to run a little promo again, and I'm going to go over and tell Kevin in the other studio that he has to move over here. So bear with me, folks. I will be right back, and we'll bring Kevin and Lori back on the broadcast, and then we'll really be rocking and rolling.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, I'm back, and there we go. Now we're in the right place. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Doing okay. Early in the morning, so it's quiet.
Yeah, well, you're on in a totally different time zone, and I see you still have Whopper behind you.
I do.
The big computer from War Games.
Showing my age.
I love it. Are you there, Spock? That's Lori's name when she's not only in the system only by audio. Like she's Spock's brain.
Spock's brain. Roger that. I am here, but I am busy sending an email to Paul, our next guest.
Okay.
Making sure he's ready. Good. I see you got Kevin. I just sent you an email, Kevin. Please disregard. We're having technical difficulties today, but you guys chat for a minute and I'll be right with you.
Okay, Spock. Over and out.
Roger that.
I'm glad you're here because we need your expertise tonight, especially, you know, I want to talk about this whole Wagner thing in Russia. I want to talk about this unrest in France, because I'm sure that you have some perspectives on this and some information that will enlighten us. Let's start with what happened in Russia.
Well, you know, take everything you heard in the West, including some of the major military analysts, and throw it out the window. You know, yeah, something happened. I just happened to be going through Rostov-on-Don, which is actually where all this occurred. And just to clarify for people, they keep hearing Rostov, which is what Russia calls both Rostov and Rostov-on-Don, two different cities, one 200 kilometers away and one about 1,100 kilometers away. So all this happened 1,100 kilometers. So, you know what, 600-700 miles from Moscow. And just happened to be going through there late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And, you know, amazingly, yeah, Wagner was in the streets in Rostov-on-Don, but people weren't running up to them, hugs. You know, about the only thing you saw was people mad because they were ruining the streets. Russians don't get excited about things like that often. And, you know, it wasn't as big as it was made out to be in the West. I was in Moscow Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Yes, the Kremlin was closed off. You could not get into Red Square, and you had to stay on the opposite side of the highway from the front of the Kremlin. So, you know, it wasn't like, you know, miles long closed around Moscow. The roads weren't blocked. Monday was declared as a holiday for security reasons by the mayor of Moscow, but you would have never known it by being
Holiday.
there.
Now that's an interesting twist, because what we were hearing over here in the West was that it's martial law, that Moscow was locked down, like you said, for security reasons, but they just called it a holiday. Really?
Yeah, it's a day off, stay home.
There you go. It's not an
it was
emergency. It's a
stay home.
holiday. Just stay home.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were sofa shopping on Sunday, and we were asking people all over. It's like, well, are you open Monday? Well, yeah. Why? So, well, it's been declared a day off for security reasons. Oh, nah. I'm working tomorrow, and literally, I had people pinging me in Telegram and saying, oh, don't go to the Duma on Monday because they're closed. I aired an interview
they
that
had every indication that something was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah, I had the indication that I was going to go to the Duma and I was going to record an interview and I was going to stream it tonight. So, and that's what happened. People were coming and going, no questions asked. It really, other than the Kremlin itself being cordoned off, nothing was really going on. There were not tanks in the streets. There were not, I've seen reports about armored vehicles on the streets of Moscow.
Saw some video that purported to be that.
Yeah, I was watching Rick's video on France in the other channel, and looked a lot like what they were claiming was Moscow.
Right.
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
I can tell you that there were no armored vehicles and tanks and armed men in the streets of Moscow. Even with the Kremlin cordoned off, there was a great lack of armed people guarding it. Now, I'm sure there were some somewhere, but
right.
No more than.
It was interesting. You're right, Kevin. I was watching like some live cams of buildings around the Kremlin, just kind of keeping an eye on the Kremlin that day, and traffic was moving normally. People walking around. It looked like just another day in Moscow. So I'm sure the building was secure, but like you say, it was kind of invisible security, which is the best kind of security. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there were some people trying to walk through the Red Square. You could not get in. All the door. They have this gum shopping center on the edge of Red Square, and you could get into the shopping center, and I could literally throw a softball from there to the Kremlin building, the yellow building, and this is how close people were. Now, the doors were locked. You couldn't go out there. There were police out, but no military.
Yeah, I talked to, we were doing a big Twitter space as all this stuff was unfolding. I was on with Mario Nuffel, and we had like millions of people tuned in as this whole thing was unfolding. And of course, you had the alarmists on one side, the pro-NATO, pro-Ukrainian crowd, guys like Malcolm Nance, who were predicting the end of the world. There'll be a new president in Russia by sundown, that kind of thing. But then we had people like Tara Reid, my friend Tara Reid, who joined that space. And she's like, I'm walking around Moscow right now. I don't see any tanks. I don't see any troops. I don't see anybody panicking. Everything's normal. Most places are open. Just went for lunch. She said it's really not a big deal. While everybody else on that space was freaking out and predicting the end of Russia as we know it.
Yeah, Tara and I were together on Saturday. So
were you? That's awesome. That's cool.
So
you were in Moscow, or she came to Crimea?
No, I was in Moscow. That's how I ended up in Rostov-on-Don Friday night. I was on my way to Moscow for Saturday to we were recording some TV shows.
Very
So
cool. So what, I mean, we've heard mutiny come out of, the mouths of, well, Russian officials, including Vladimir Putin. They used mutiny, rebellion. I think maybe not the best choice of words. And here in the West, we're hearing we've heard the word coup, attempted coup. What do you make of it all from your end?
It was definitely, I wouldn't call it a coup. A coup wouldn't have been successful. It really, it was about Prigozhin and money. A lot of people don't know that when Russia accepted the Donetsk and Lugansk territories into the Russian Federation, Wagner became illegal. They could not legally operate in that area because private military companies aren't allowed to operate on Russian territory. So they did have a contract with the Russian government through May of this year to provide security and to fight. But because they were now illegal, unless they were under the command of the Russian Federation Ministry of Defense, Prigozhin refused to sign the contract to put his men under the military because it would have cost him money. So he had close to a $1 billion deal with the Russian Federation over fighting in Donbass. I don't remember the exact figure, like $900 million. And, this is why he started jumping up and down in March and April about not having shells, not having weapons. No, he apparently had weapons because he turned them against Russia. But, Shoigu and Putin just refused to give him, it would have required Vladimir Putin to say, I give you a special disposition to operate on Russian Federation territory. And constitutionally, it can't happen. And Putin follows the law. So he wasn't going to make exceptions. My belief, and this is the information I've gotten from insiders I know, is that Prigozhin was just being greedy and he wanted this new contract signed. And come May 1st, when his contract was no good, Shoigu just let him use up all their weapons and bullets. So go home.
Well, that jives with what Scott Ritter's take was on what happened, basically, although Scott goes a little bit further and he opines, I guess you'd call this just an opinion of his, that there was some Western money involved, perhaps, that we were trying to turn Prigozhin and use him for our own devices in trying to effect a regime change in Russia. What do you think of that theory?
I think it's a possible theory. I think had the West been involved in it and given him, supposedly they found boxes with 4 billion rubles. So, roughly $500,000, outside of one of his buildings. I've looked at the photos. It's just a bunch of boxes. It looks like it was staged. I don't think that was true. But Prigozhin is a businessman. He isn't a military leader. You keep hearing about how he bravely led his men into battle. He was around the front lines sometimes when, not that close to the front lines, but he's a businessman. And to lose that amount of money, just wasn't acceptable to him. Now, the CIA, they've made a great point of saying we weren't involved. But of course we have, like Blinken saying that, they could have used that to their benefit. There is proof that Prigozhin was talking to the SBU. So, it's likely something was going on. I don't necessarily think the United States was funding him, or he would have had a lot more American weapons to fight with.
You would think. But we don't really know what he had, do we? in terms of weaponry and where it came from? I mean, we assume he was stockpiling secretly weapons for months.
Well, yeah, he had some tanks with the V on it, so they were, and the Z, so he had tanks from Crimea and stuff that had been around in Donbass for a while. But what did he have? We don't know. He shot some helicopters out of the sky. 12 Russian servicemen died in that. Prigozhin claims that there was no bloodshed, which is a lie.
That's a lie.
And even 2 of his own men supposedly were killed. I haven't been able to verify. This is another thing that Scott Ritter was saying, is that the Russian Federation bombed him or his men, and 2 men died. I can tell you from being in the Channel 1 TV studios on Saturday, I've seen the proof that the Russian Federation did not strike his camps in the rear of the lines. He was on the 3rd line of defense, so quite a ways back, and Russia did not bomb him.
Thanks for confirming that, because there's been a lot of speculation about who actually attacked that camp, or if the camp was attacked at all. It was very hard to tell in the video what had happened there. The trees didn't appear to be burned. I had a lot of questions when I saw that video.
The information I've seen is there just wasn't an attack. Anything that showed a possible attack was probably from, Ukrainian attacks on them at some point, but it wouldn't have been that far back from the front lines.
So do you think that Prigozhin himself would have staged that attack as his own false flag, as a justification to do what he did?
Yeah. Hey, I want another, billion US dollar contract. So if you don't give it to me, I'm going to make you all look bad.
So you're saying that he may well have killed a couple of his own men to advance his own agenda for money?
I don't know that he even did that. The soldiers that were on the lines in Donetsk, and I don't know the exact number, but these are the guys who did not participate. So I've heard some analysts, including Scott, say, well, they're sitting there waiting to be sent to Belarus. But most of these guys signed contracts with the Russian Federation military to continue fighting.
That's what I thought. Right.
Yeah.
They wanted no part of this uprising, this rebellion.
Yeah.
Right.
And the few people, I shouldn't say few, I guess there were a couple thousand, actually were not commanders. They were, as Putin put it, men who were misled by their leadership. So they're the ones who are going to Belarus.
So Wagner total had about 50,000 men. That's the number I hear. Is that about right? Do you think total? Not to go into Moscow, but I mean their total fighting force so far is about.
Yeah, I've heard numbers between 35 and 50,000.
Yeah, that's about what I'm hearing. So that means that if he had 5,000 men for his mutiny, that was 10% or less of his total fighting force who decided to go along with this.
Yeah, and I wasn't in Rostov-on-Don long enough to count men, but I'd say it was more like 1,000, maybe 1,200.
I figured those numbers were exaggerated, greatly exaggerated, because on the day that it was unfolding, which I guess was a week ago today, I think it was last Saturday, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was last Saturday.
We heard he's got 50,000 men headed for Moscow, right? Mm-hmm. Then it shrunk to 30,000 men. Then it was 20,000. Then it was 10,000. Finally, they settled on about 5,000. But I even felt like that number was probably exaggerated too.
It was exaggerated. Like I say, the videos I've seen, what I saw in the streets there, it was maybe 1,000 men.
Yeah, it didn't look like 5,000 men at all to me. And, at least what I saw.
1,000, couple of tanks. They ran down the gate to the Ministry of Defense there. It all basically happened around the military base.
That's what I thought. And so this is crazy. What were they thinking? Did they really think that they were going to take Moscow with only 5,000 men or 1,000 men? Are they out of their minds? I think it was really the plan, or was this all a bluff to blackmail Putin into giving him more money?
I think it was just a bluff. Give me money or I'm going to march on you with some of my men.
That's a suicidal mission. Is he nuts? That's crazy.
And I've even heard, our friend Scott talking about columns of vehicles going to Moscow, and they were within 200 kilometers. So, less than 100 miles from Moscow. And there were no columns of vehicles going up the M4 highway. And if you think about it, and I think Scott may have got caught in this Rostov versus Rostov-on-Don misnomer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because he said, well, they were about 200 kilometers away, but think about it. 1,100 kilometers, it would take, if you could get 90 kilometers an hour, 45 miles an hour out of those vehicles on Russian roads, it would still take 12 to 18 hours to get from Rostov to Moscow. I was on a high-speed express train, and it took me that long.
Oh, well, that changes the timeline considerably. What we heard is once they crossed into, of course, most of these pundits that were speculating that day had no idea what the actual distance was to Moscow. So as soon as they crossed the border at Rostov, they were saying, they'll be in Moscow within 6 hours.
That would be some mighty fast vehicles on Russian roads.
And we're talking about tanks, and these vehicles don't move that fast.
Yeah. Maximum speed limit in Russia is generally about 90 kilometers an hour. And you can get that out of a good superhighway. But again, you're still 12 hours away.
And I'm sure there was civilian traffic on those roads as well. It's not like they had the highway to themselves for their convoy.
Yeah, there was. People were being told not to use the road if they didn't have to. They were not blocked off. I saw the pictures of, farmers with backhoes digging up the roads to slow down Wagner.
Yeah.
Never happened.
So, that didn't happen. Okay, now I'm really confused. So much of the video that we saw last Saturday, we had no way of verifying it. It was just floating around on Telegram, floating around on Twitter. And so we didn't know what was real, what was staged, what might be old. And oftentimes reporters didn't have time or didn't take the time to double check before they aired it on the news.
Well, it's pretty hard for them to verify facts in Russia when most of them aren't willing to come here and they want to do their analysis from the other side of the ocean.
We're sitting in a hotel room in Kiev.
Yes, sitting in a hotel in Warsaw, pretending they're in Kiev.
Yes.
Ignore most of what you heard. I have it from extremely good sources that I cannot name. Now I'm going to sound like the propaganda spitter, because I won't name my source. But Putin was aware of this before Friday.
I figured he did. Of course he knew. They have excellent intelligence in Russia.
Yeah. How can you expect the CIA to have known a couple of days in advance or even a week in advance? And
And the Russians
FSB
didn't know, right? That's something I often point out. I study the Cold War a lot. I'm a history buff, and the Cold War period fascinates me because it's all these spy capers. It's all a big game of spy versus spy, the CIA versus the KGB. And we were never once, not once that I'm aware of during the Cold War, ever able to surprise the Soviets, the Russians. We thought we had them a few times, right? We were going to sneak up on them like at the Bay of Pigs. How'd that work out? Castro knew we were coming like at least a week before we landed at the Bay of Pigs. We were never able to sneak up on the KGB. And even though the KGB no longer exists, I guarantee you the Russians saw us coming. This was not a surprise.
Yeah. Well, think about it. You've got all these men, they're 50,000, 30,000, 5,000 men with armored vehicles and tanks in Donetsk. And you're expected to believe that they went from Donetsk to mainland Russia. And I'll just call it that, for the defining border, without anybody ever noticing. I guarantee you, if I get in a tank out on the street in front of the house here and I start driving down the road, I'm going to have somebody asking questions.
That's right. The government will definitely notice that.
So I'm curious to get your take on what's going on with these generals that we are being told have been arrested. What is going on now that all of this has happened? Is Putin looking to hold people accountable? Are there actually arrests being made, or is this more hype?
It's hype. General Armageddon is still in charge of things. Shoigu's still in charge of things. Like I say, they knew about it in advance. Putin said in his statement on Monday that he had taken steps to avoid bloodshed. He ordered the military not to shoot at them, and he wanted to find a peaceful solution. This is Putin. This is why people love him. And, it was resolved that way. So I'm sure that Lukashenko was involved in this ahead of time as well. I don't think this was a last minute Lukashenko picking up the red phone and saying, hey, Vlad, I'm willing to help you out here. They've got camps already for the Wagner guys who have been accused of treason. And though Prigozhin won't be charged for his insurrection or whatever you want to call it, they are looking into his finances. They're looking into the men who participated, their finances. They're interviewing everybody and they're asking, what went on. And I think you will see some of these guys charged.
Well, I certainly hope
Scott,
so, Kevin. They can't just let this whole thing drop and leave these guys unpunished. You just can't do that. You have to make it clear that this is not going to be tolerated or it'll happen again.
Yes. Scott gave his opinion that, Putin would poison him or, have him thrown out a top floor window, something like that. I won't go that far.
I heard him say that.
Yeah, I don't believe that really.
No, I don't either, because that would be a propaganda win for the West. If Putin harms a hair on Prigozhin's chinny chin, or if he kills him, they'll say he's another Stalin. They'll say he's a brutal dictator. You know what they'll say. So I just think he should punish him legally with a long prison sentence, though. That's just
I think banishing him to Belarus, putting him on the border with Ukraine, and making him and his men train the Belarusian military is like putting him in prison. Now, he is keeping some of the Wagner business. He has contracts in Africa for security there. and he's still being paid for that. But, you know, greed is greed. I want more. The more you have, the more you want.
Right.
Yeah. So what next, do you think?
I think it's all done and over with. When I first heard it Friday night, I said, you know, this will be all done and over with within 24 hours. And it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, the heightened security in Moscow, like on Monday, you know, even around the Kremlin is closed today, even, you know, is because they believe that there could be some stray guys running around. But it's not the military that's visible, it's the police. You know, I was outside the Duma on Monday, and what we see is, you know, they're checking everybody who goes into the Duma. This is normal, but they had, you know, 2 guys and an undercover guy walking up and down the street in front of the Duma with AK-47s or AK-72s, you know, on their arms. So I saw 2 military guys Monday.
Can't blame them. That's exactly what they should do. I mean, we know for months now, and the attacks have ramped up across the border into Russia proper. This has been increasing in severity and regularity. And then on Victory Day, you know, well, before Victory Day, you know, we had that drone attack on the Kremlin. We know that the Ukrainians were sending drones at Red Square on Victory Day. I mean, they're really looking to do something big, which also leads me to ask you about the latest on the nuclear power plant, the Zaporozhye. You know, we're hearing that, well, of course, in the West, they say that Russia's going to blow up their own nuclear power plant, which I, of course, do not believe, but I would tend to believe that that might be the Ukrainians on our orders or with our backing. And this NATO summit is coming up, which makes me wonder if they're looking to concoct some kind of big false flag incident to kick this war up a notch during that NATO summit.
I keep hearing about these, you know, supposed false flags that Russia is going to commit. You know, the dam. Russia blew up the dam and wiped out their own positions. You know, they're going to blow up the nuclear power plant, radiate their own territories that they fought hard for at this point, destroy the water system in Crimea, you know, with the radiation.
Doesn't make
you know,
any
and
sense.
we heard last year's NATO summit was the same thing. Something big is going to happen. The West is going to provoke Russia so that they can bring NATO in.
I remember.
You know, I will sleep well during the summit regardless.
You don't seem at all worried. You're cool as a cucumber, as usual, Kevin.
What's to worry about, you know? What did somebody tell me the other day? One of the guys I was talking to said, well, what got you to move to Crimea? You moved to a dangerous place. Well, Moscow's dangerous right now if if you're worried about 3 drones versus, 50 a day going the other direction.
Hell, Chicago is more dangerous than Moscow. Paris is more dangerous.
France
than
is more dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, yeah, but there's an earthquake fault where you live. I'm like, well, I lived in California. Here. Where can you go that it's safe?
I live in Oklahoma. We have tornadoes all the time. I lost a roof 3 months ago. It's just
I actually mentioned tornadoes in Oklahoma too. I was thinking of you.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. You've been there.
I can tell you, when I was on the train listening to all this stuff going on, there were a bunch of Russian military there. And these guys laughed about it too. So I don't think it's going to be a big problem. I think the West understands that Russia is a nuclear power. And, if they cause anything too big and they threaten Russia's territory, the world will end as we know it.
That's right. And I don't think they're that stupid or that crazy. I mean, you saw how NATO quickly put out a statement last Saturday as all this was going on. NATO said, hey, it's not us. We've got nothing to do with it. Please don't nuke us. They wanted to make it real clear that, and everyone was very nervous about who was in charge and what about the nukes. And nobody wanted Prigozhin having access to the nuclear codes or trying to be the new president of new leader of Russia. There was just so much conjecture and speculation going on as to how this would end. And even in the West, the guys that were cheering Prigozhin and hoping he succeeded, they sure didn't want him leading Russia because he's a loose cannon.
Well, and what did they expect? Prigozhin claims that he was going after the military heads, Shoigu.
He never said he was going after Putin. Never.
Well, in fact, he said he was not going after Putin.
That's right.
But think about it. You topple the top military advisors to Putin, you're going to topple his government. And it just wasn't going to happen. They had already made preparations. Putin kept his calm. I hear people saying, well, why didn't he just wipe them off the face of the earth? Because he cares about human beings. I will give you options. And if you don't want to take those options, then I'll deal with it.
So can we kind of shift gears here a little bit? I'd like to get some thoughts regarding what's going on in France.
I agree with what you were saying earlier. I don't think it has a lot to do with, one teenager being killed. It makes me think of George Floyd. We had all these riots in the United States based on, the killing of one guy, but, there was a good amount, just like in France, mob mentality. And, you've got the frustrations with the government been going on for, the Yellow Vests have been protesting about this for 2 years now?
Yeah.
I think it's just an excuse to continue pushing on Macron. I don't know how he got reelected with so many people who dislike him, but I don't think the way they're reacting to the protesters is going to buy him any friends. I think it's heavy-handed. The video you were showing a little while ago, they had some armored vehicles out there. Gee, it looked like Moscow, supposedly. But, all the stuff blowing up and whatnot was fireworks.
That's right.
Somebody lit a big pile of fireworks.
That's right. I mean, they have burned vehicles and some buildings have been set on fire, just like we saw with a lot of these, we've seen in the past with Black Lives Matter protests in the United States. It's a very similar kind of thing, I think.
And I'm not there. I don't know how much of it is real and how much isn't. But I think a lot of it is staged for effect.
So who do you think is behind that kind of propaganda or information warfare? Or is there any way to know?
I don't know at this point in time to really know. If I was going to guess, it would be the same guys that have weakened Western Europe over Ukraine. The same three-letter friends in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
They seem to be behind everything.
Yeah, and they seem to have it's like they leave their fingerprints all over it or a signature, you can just it's a pattern. It's a brand. It's what it is.
Yeah. And the media, I mean, that, like I say, that video you showed, it was obvious, there was a fire in the background. There were things going off. It was fireworks. So, how much of that was the media staging it? It's kind of like, the BBC reporter laying in the trench in Ukraine, talking about being shot at and he was in danger. And then the old babushka comes walking by with her shopping bag,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. It made you watch it though, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. Although I mean, I do get the sense that there is unrest in France to some degree. But when you're watching media, the cameras are focused on the action. You're not seeing what's going on 3 streets over where people are having a barbecue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I believe this is going on. I think there's protests. There were in the US after George Floyd, but were they as big as the media made it out to be? And who controls the media? Same guys again. You've got unrest in Germany, Denmark, all of these countries. Why? Because the United States had to stick their fingers into Russia, the Nord Stream pipeline. They've basically ruined the economy in Western Europe, and people are tired of it.
Yeah, that's what gets people out into the streets is an economy that is under pressure, where people are seeing rising prices, inflation, unemployment, where they can't afford to buy the necessities of life. That'll get people out into the streets every time when they're hungry.
Yeah. Well, I think my daughter is here from Colorado right now, and she talks about paying $6-7 a gallon for gas at the pumps. And when I did the conversion in Moscow the other day, we're paying like $2.20 a gallon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here in Canada, it's Canada Day. So to celebrate, our government has tacked on, I think it's 13 cents per liter as a tax, or it might be 17. And by the time they're done, they're going to increase it 4 times, and it'll be over 60 cents per liter, which will put us to a total. It'll get us well over $2 per liter for gasoline by the time they're done.
Yeah. So about $8 Canadian, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you have to pay for all those obsolete weapons that are being sent to Ukraine somehow.
That's what I was saying too. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I've assessed this as being is a giant garage sale where they are a dumping ground for all the old weapons from the West and the NATO countries, where they get to dump them into Ukraine, but they don't discount everything. They write them a bill for the full pop on all the tanks and the guns and everything. And then the people in Ukraine are saddled with the debt of paying for all of these weapons, which are on the verge of becoming obsolete, if not obsolete already.
Well, better yet, they then take your tax dollars, give it to Ukraine to pay for those weapons. And of course, most of it goes in their pockets. Right. So you bought the weapons originally. You are paying for the weapons the second time for the old ones to be bought. And then you're going to pay the third time to have the new weapons built.
That's right. It's insane. And it ends up being a way of, and I hate to use the word, but it's true. I mean, they're sort of enslaving us, the middle class, the poor, the people of Ukraine, while they're telling us that they're trying to free us and provide liberty and democracy, when in reality, we're going to pay, our children are going to pay, our grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren will be paying for this for generations to come.
They're trying to oppress the people in the West, bring them under control, eliminate the conservative class, because the conservatives, we're the ones who complain, and we're the ones who will stand up and do something about it. So, if you're a man and you want to sleep with a man, go ahead. But, it's not right in my eyes. I don't want to see it taught in the schools. But what can I say?
And we saw there that someone over on Vancouver Island is saying here in Canada, they're already paying over $2 per liter for gasoline, which means by the time the Trudeau regime is finished with us with this new round of carbon taxation, will be on Vancouver Island. I'll bet you there'll be like $2.40 a liter.
Yeah.
Getting, pushing $8.50. They could be at $9 a gallon before you know it.
And then for the green agenda, they will eventually tell you have to buy an electric car, where they're actually destroying the ecosystem worse to make the batteries. So it's all money.
Yep. And that's what I was saying earlier tonight, too, here on this Canada Day, as we celebrate everything. Everything is upside down. Black is white, white is black, up is down, down is up. And to save the environment, we're electrifying the automobile industry. And because we're so concerned about the environment, we're making sure that we send depleted uranium shells to Ukraine so that they can blow up tanks and contaminate the countryside with radioactive material.
Yeah, but they're also sending the crap tanks. The Abrams that they shoot those shells with are the original, steel ones that are not armored very well. So, Russia blows them up before they ever get there.
Yeah. You have a real background in, I guess, cybersecurity and information warfare. So, I mean, overall, just give me your assessment of how much was information warfare a part of what we witnessed in Russia and even what we're seeing in Paris right now? And I hope that isn't too broad a question, but as I watched all of this, I honestly didn't get that excited about what I was watching happen in Russia. It looked to me like there was a lot of propaganda, information warfare. That seemed to be more of what was going on than anything else. What's your assessment?
I can tell you for a fact that in 2020, I was doing training for the Department of Defense on cyber war, information warfare against Russia over Ukraine, Crimea, and Georgia. So, this all started under Trump, but right about the time, I don't know, a few months before, the elections, Department of Defense, Pentagon. And, I was actually talking about this with Tara on this TV show we were on Saturday, and Lloyd Austin, talk about an idiot, but it's all propaganda. He was appointed by Biden, and they had this sexual abuse scandal come out immediately. And he went on the media and he said, I am going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to look into it. We're going to prosecute people for this, and I'm not going to tolerate it in my military. What has he done about it since? 3 years later?
Haven't heard a
zero.
thing.
Yeah. You still in the U.S. military have the sexual assault cases. My research on it is the cases have gone up and the prosecutions have gone down.
Right.
Like to the tune of 10 or 11%. The cases going up and prosecutions down close to 30%.
Right, because prosecutions bring with it bad press. That's what they don't want.
But it's propaganda. Let's get out there. Let's get ahead of it. And, the whole Russia thing, lot of propaganda. The West trying to make people, say Putin is weak. He won't be president in 48 hours. His military will go against him. But I can tell you, in front of that Duma building. There were people protesting at both entrances, front and back. And they had signs. They were calling for the Duma to pass laws to give Putin all the power to put down Wagner.
I believe that. And I was going to
Yeah.
ask, I don't know if you've heard anything since in this past week, but have any opinion polls been conducted there in Russia, kind of taking the temperature of the people? Do they stand behind Putin more than ever before now, or is some public support slipping after this incident? Are you hearing anything yet on that?
That's interesting you ask, because my daughter was working at the Levada Center over the summer, and that's what
Cool.
they do.
Yep. That's what
And
they do. Biggest polling organization in Russia, right? Levada?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the Gallup poll of Russia, basically.
The Gallup poll of Russia.
Yeah.
Support for Putin has actually gone up.
I believe it. That's what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
That's what I've been saying ever since this happened. I'm like, watch.
I was
They'll love
following
you
a
more than
I was
ever.
following a car. Yeah, I was following a car the other day, and on the back of it, it said, "Those who cancel Tchaikovsky listen to Wagner."
Ah!
And when I posted this picture, I had people saying, "Well, that seems to be pro Wagner." And it's like, no, you don't understand. It is a Russian slap in the face to the United States
Yeah.
and Western Europe. You cancel Tchaikovsky, you will believe what he says. People here do not believe it.
And we definitely don't listen to Wagner. That's Nazi music, right? We don't cancel it. We just don't listen to it.
Russians don't care. They listen to it anyway.
Do they really? I thought Wagner would bring back bad memories for Russians. They wouldn't endorse it. Wouldn't want to hear it.
I don't know. It's classical music. Russians don't pay a lot of attention to that. You don't hear about things like France over here. It's not in the news. They don't care. The politicians pay attention. People like, us, we pay attention because we're looking for stuff like that. But
yeah, just give me some of the Seventh Symphony by Shostakovich and my heart swells. I would think that makes the heart of every Russian swell when they hear that symphony. And I'm an American and it still gets me,
Yeah. I don't know. It's
and the Russian national anthem is one of the most beautiful pieces of music I think ever written. One of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard. You don't have to be Russian to be moved by that piece of music.
Well, you know what I like? I like the fact that you don't care.
I like that too.
I wish I could be more like you. I mean, I've been sort of in a not caring mode a little bit with some of this stuff, but man, you are just cool as a cucumber. You're like my dad, actually. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, you get a little older, you just kind of don't give a shit.
It's the key to a long life.
Whatever
You're
happens,
a lot less
happens.
stressed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get excited over other things, but like my contractors, having to redo their work 3 times, but it's like I told somebody, I could have stepped off the curb in Moscow and got run over by a bus. So bus,
Right.
drone, nuclear weapon,
Life
Whatever.
is short. Enjoy it while you can. Why get upset about things that you don't have any control over anyway?
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, we're getting to the end of our time with you. Is there anything you think we might be missing? Anything you would like to add?
All I can say is people should really take a look at the Russian government, how they operate, the people that are their representatives, the members of the Duma, and really, rather than listening to the propaganda about them and the things the mainstream media puts out, look and see how they actually work. It's the way the United States' Congress was set up when the country was founded. And the US does not operate that way. I don't know enough about what's going on in Canada other than, they're a Me Too screwed up government too. But, I reached out to one of the Duma members back about 2 months ago, and I said, hey, can I interview you? And believe it or not, on social media, she replied to me and she said, sure. And had a good interview. She talked about why she ran for office. She ran against men. She was elected by the people in her region, Altai region. And she says, now it is my job to show them that they made the right choice. It isn't about what I told them for the election. It's about following through and doing the right thing. And in general, this is how Western governments were set up originally. This is how Russia operates. Yeah.
If only our Congress was like that. Most of us in the States, we don't feel like the people that we elect to represent our interests actually do in DC. The trust has been broken, and I'm afraid irreparably so. And if there's one message that I take away from what has happened in Russia, not just over the past year and a half, but over the past week, in a time of crisis like that, how the people rallied behind their president, put their trust and their faith in their government, which they already trust. I mean, it's astonishing to compare between Russia and the United States, and probably Canada too, how much the people of Russia trust their leader, trust their government. And over here, nobody trusts the damn thing our government says, because they've been caught lying so many times that trust is broken.
Well, think about it. Ever since Obama, nothing has been accomplished in the United States. You have Democrats leading one house, Republicans leading another. They fight, they don't accomplish anything. Next election, they swap it, they fight, they don't accomplish anything. You don't see that here.
Governments have to earn trust. And, I make this argument, which is not popular with a lot of my fellow Americans. I say that we should get rid of term limits. This is the time when everyone's crying for term limits. They want more term limits on Congress, because we've got all these old people like Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi in power, and they shouldn't be. But to me, I think term limits were a mistake. When we passed the 22nd Amendment in 1947, that was to prevent another FDR. And FDR was elected by an overwhelming majority of the voters 4 times. President Putin in Russia has had more than 20 years now in power. He's coming up on almost 25 years in power, off and on. I know he took a few years off because of the Constitution there and then came back, but the Constitution of Russia has been amended. So now next year he can run again. He'll probably win again. And he may be in power for another 20 more years. And I would argue that that's actually good for the country, not bad for the country. Here in the States, we can't have a president serve more than 2 terms since we passed the 22nd Amendment. I think that only empowers the deep state, the permanent government. While we change leaders every 4 to 8 years, they continue to run the show. I would argue that a strong leader like Russia has, who's in power for a long period of time by the will of the people, the overwhelming majority of the people keep reelecting him and clearly want him to run the country. I kind of wish we would go back to doing that and just get rid of the 22nd Amendment. And as far as old folks like Joe Biden, who should clearly not be in office, I would suggest to my fellow Americans that we amend the Constitution and put an age limit. We have an age minimum, right? You have to be a certain age to run for Congress or for president, but there's nothing in the Constitution about a maximum age. Seems to me we could arrive at a maximum age, 65, 70, 72, whatever number we pick, and just say, if you're over that age, you must retire. It's forced retirement, just like federal employees. Most federal employees are forced to retire at 65. but that's not true for members of Congress or appointed positions. That's why Dr. Anthony Fauci got to stay in his job till he was almost 90. And that's why Joe Biden is president.
And treat them like everybody else, all their citizens get treated. When they're out of office, quit paying them.
That too. I think it's ridiculous. And the pensions they get are huge. Fauci got to retire with a nice fat pension after everything he did. No accountability.
The other thing that I see the United States and Canada, other Western countries would have to do is they have to give power to the leader to actually run the country. Right. The military industrial complex running the presidency has not worked for a long time. When Putin says, Shoigu, you will do this, he will do it. If he talks to Sergei Aksionov and says, I gave you 8 billion rubles last year to build new roads, where are they? They react. So he has the power to run the country. U.S. president doesn't.
No. I think it's pretty obvious that the president has very little power. Now, the Constitution gives the president and the executive branch a great deal of power. But ever since November 22nd, 1963, I think every president has understood, or they are made to understand very quickly, who really runs things. And it's not the president.
Not them,
Yeah, it's not them. I think they made that real clear in Dallas in 1963. Don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that. So, Kevin, tell our audience where they can find you so they can follow you.
Well, one of the places you can find me is over there on the screen. My green screen pointing isn't so great. Infowars.press. No, I am not related. Or American Crimea on YouTube. So those are the best places to catch me.
Well, I'm so glad that you stayed up late and made time for us again. We love having you on Maverick News, and thank you for the update and the intel, the info. And I think you're right. Your analysis so far is the most logical, the most reasoned, dispassionate, and just the facts, ma'am. And that's what I appreciate about you. So thanks again, brother.
I'm just reporting what I see. So,
well, greatly appreciated.
Thank you both for inviting me on again. And it's always a pleasure. Reach out anytime. I'm glad to stay up with you guys.
Fantastic. We will have you back. That's for sure, Seal. Be able to find Kevin here too. Again, appreciate it very much, Kevin. It's been great.
Hope you get some sleep.
Yeah, I will.
Kevin.
All right.
Bye.
See you, my friend. Take care.
Bye now.
Okay, so are we ready to move on and do this new thing?
I think so. Yeah. I was looking for our guest, but I see him backstage, but I don't see his camera.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
That's strange.
He's kind of incognito in darkness there.
Device is not connected. Looks like he's having some technical difficulties. We'll give Paul a few minutes to set up his webcam and get that connected. I think he's having a little trouble there. But so tell me about, I missed the part of the show today. What happened at Parliament Hill with the flags? Did they get arrested?
No. So no video shot. So I wasn't sure what happened, but just a short time ago, I did phone Adrian, the realist, and I asked him, and I had him on the phone and people could hear. And he tells us that 31 flags were confiscated as his supporters tried to go through the checkpoints. 31 flags confiscated. One flag was allowed to be carried on to Parliament Hill. And then in a very discreet area, in a sort of a low profile ceremony, tucked away someplace, he says that a flag was risen on Parliament Hill in a respectful manner. While parliamentary police and others or security personnel looked on, but no video was shot because it's a First Nations ceremony.
I told
what-
you. I
that's what
told
he
you that's what was going to happen. I was like, dude, two things are going to happen. You're going to get your flags confiscated immediately. And boom, they did. And two, you're probably going to get arrested or you're going to leave. So it sounds like he chose not to go to jail today.
Yeah, well, he wasn't even there. I mean, he's out in Alberta.
Oh, I thought he was leading.
No, he's
this
not even
whole-
there. There
Oh.
are supporters like that.
It's disturbing, though, that there were 31 of these damn flags.
Yeah, well, to me, I don't like them. Obviously,
Nope.
I disagree with the use of the swastika. I don't agree with some of the things that Adrian said on the program last night, especially his references to Jews owning the media and controlling the economy and enslaving us. I don't agree with that. This is all, I would say, very anti-Semitic propaganda that is and very Nazi-like, and I don't like it. It's
I find
dangerous
it
talk.
odious.
Yeah.
To quote our friend Scott Ritter, that's his favorite word is odious. It smells. Not a fan.
Adrian says that this is a First Nations symbol that was used by Native Americans before the Nazis appropriated it and turned the symbol into something evil. Nevertheless, you can't dismiss
Can't change history. It is what it
the
is.
Nazis did, and to normalize its use in our society today, I think is extremely dangerous. And then you combine that with even just what he was saying. If you really listen to what he's saying, this is an anti-Semitic narrative that he is engaging in. It's absolutely steeped in prejudice. And in my view, these are words of hate. Now, as I've said, I support free speech and freedom of expression. It doesn't mean that I support what he's doing, but I will support anybody's right to engage in even hateful expression, because I think the best way to combat that is with better arguments, better information, and truth. But the government, they'd rather just confiscate the flags, right?
Right.
I'd rather have it out in the open where we can have a discussion about it rather than force it underground where it's beneath the surface. And this is what has led to me being so surprised by the reaction that I've had, for the past 6 months with regard to this issue. I bring it up and I'm thinking, well, if I just talk about it, then people will understand that this isn't a good thing and we can just address it and take care of the problem. But
that's what you did last night. That was a great conversation that you guys had.
Again, and
then you got attacked for it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The pro-Nazi, pro-swastika, you just don't understand your history brigade was out, the trolls rode in full force and they came down hard. And I'm like, Rick is a jerk. And Rick, just whatever insult they can throw at me.
How dare you make us look bad with our swastika flag?
Yeah, how dare you actually
You're doing a pretty good job of that yourself,
said.
buddy.
It's like,
it's not like we have to make you look bad. You're the guy with the swastika flag. I mean,
no, I understand Adrian's perspective and I respect him. He's not my enemy. But what he is doing, I believe, is very misguided. It is dividing people. It's very divisive. It is a symbol that I think is very dangerous. So I absolutely disagree with him. I understand that Native Americans used that symbol, as have other cultures around the world throughout history. But you cannot just select pieces of history to fit your agenda or your objective and just dismiss everything that happened in Nazi Germany and say, well, that doesn't count. We get to use the symbol because it was ours first. So all of this other history doesn't matter. Well, that's not true.
Look, I guarantee you that most people out there, I'd say 99.9% of people when they see a swastika flag, they ain't thinking about Native Americans.
Yeah.
The first thought that comes to their mind is Nazi Germany, and it's always going to be Nazi Germany. And I'm sorry that the Nazis stole you and appropriated your symbol. My question to you and your followers is, why are you appropriating Nazi ideology?
And that's the problem too. It isn't just the symbol.
Not just
if
the
you
flag.
really listen to what he said,
I heard it.
There is Nazi ideology. There's anti-Semitic rhetoric in what he was saying last night. I mean, straight up.
Straight up.
And he's been accused of it before, and he's not afraid to say it.
It's his own words.
He just talks about it openly. He has an issue with Jewish people. Well,
and gay people.
And gay people.
You know, and communists. And you know who else had an issue with communists? Hitler. That was the whole ideology behind the Ukrainian nationalists. That's what drove the Nazis. They were not torturing and arresting and imprisoning and murdering Jews because of their faith. They were doing it because of their race and most importantly, their politics. Because in Eastern Europe, most Jews were communists in Russia in those years.
The issue at hand here is what's happening in Canada right now, and it's an aberration, a new version of this. I would say a fascistic, authoritarian, coercive ideology. I think it's extremely dangerous. And while this all happening while other people are trying to, I think, peacefully unite a movement.
But this guy openly says that he wants to overthrow the government. So then he's surprised.
Well, no.
He said that
I wouldn't
yesterday.
Say, careful.
and then he's surprised that the government wasn't happy to see them coming.
I don't want to put words in his mouth.
I heard him say it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true.
I mean, that's exactly what he said. He's like, this government, we're going to overthrow the government.
Yes, you're accurate.
And then he's like surprised that the government's, waiting for him when he comes to Parliament Hill. And
well, yeah, because everything he's
checking
doing
him for weapons and stuff.
And other people around him, what they're doing does pose an existential threat to the government. It's true, because they want to dismantle, they don't want to just get rid of Trudeau. They want to dismantle the entire system and start with something brand new. And he's acknowledged that.
Now, I have not heard him say the things that Christopher James and his clan say about hanging Trudeau.
Hasn't said that.
With a rope around the neck. But it's basically, look, a violent overthrow of the government is what he's advocating, along with.
Well, he will argue in public that he's not about the violence.
And then he'll turn around and say something like, "We need to overthrow the government." So,
well, I mean, at least
going to overthrow the government
you do
with
the
flowers,
math, right? Like, if you're going to challenge the government and tear down the entire system, chances are the government's not going to like that very much. So, where does that lead? You figure it out.
And you're going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to go to jail.
Oh yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah,
that's how that works.
Now, that being said, nobody was arrested today.
Right.
And that's because, if this went down the way that Adrian said it did, and, I don't see why it didn't. I think that the way he described it, probably it's entirely possible that is the way that it happened. I couldn't see it. I wasn't there. So I have to take him at his word, I guess, unless somebody else, another witness, he saw something else, but there's no video of it. But nobody arrested. But yeah, I mean, you keep pushing the government like that, and they're going to push back. If it's just that simple. Mm-hmm. You can only push a government so far, and they're not going to give up their power.
Well, and as Cindy says in our chat, and she's probably correct. She says it's because the government won't arrest natives.
That's one of the things that I was trying to get to, and before my mind kind of went down another path. But that is very true, because it becomes more complicated, especially today. You see, when you have First Nations peoples, and I'm not exactly sure who was there, but when they walk onto Parliament Hill and basically assert sovereignty and say that the parliament buildings are sitting on unceded territory, what that means is they're saying that this land belongs to First Nations. And so you have no authority over us at all. So if police challenge them,
And the government says, "Oh yeah,
right? If
you
they
wanna bet?"
challenge that, then they're going to end up in court with some sort of a constitutional court case on their hands where land claims and treaties come into play. And I think that police, generally speaking, like to try to avoid that sort of complication for the government. So they do give First Nations a lot of latitude. And I can also tell you that I don't think there's any question that, well, hang on, I shouldn't say there's no question. I think that there might be some real validity to the land claims on Parliament Hill that I think especially the Algonquin Nation might come forward with if at some point, because I've seen a lot of history surrounding that. And there's been open discussions about it. The government itself has acknowledged some of that. So yeah, when First Nations peoples go up to Parliament Hill or in a lot of other places in this country and they say this land is ours, that's it. It really does hold water. It's very true. And that's why these are over 600 nations within a nation. They have sovereignty and they are able to govern themselves. So you have First Nations go up against police or the military, and what you're really talking about is an international incident. It's not just the cops dealing with a citizen. It's a different thing altogether.
Right. Well, that's, it's all very fascinating to me. What fascinates me most, Rick, to be honest, is Native American Nazis.
I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around that.
Twist.
Because people have been conditioned to think that only white people can be bigots or Nazis or prejudice or, anti-Semitic. That's not true. Prejudice comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. So it's like, no, sorry, you don't have to be white to be a dickhead.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I don't think Adrian's actually a dickhead. It's not, I wasn't directing that at Adrian. He's not. This is the very strange thing. You would think that Adrian and I would be like, hate each other. I don't hate him at all. I actually kind of like him. I like talking to him. I don't agree with much of anything that he's saying. I'm really opposed to him. I just think he's very misguided.
Well, you heard him talk about his life story a little bit, and he had a troubled past with his family and his father. And listening to all that yesterday, I realized that this man doesn't need power, political power. He needs therapy.
Well, perhaps.
That's just my take.
I don't know. I mean, I just have to say, I do respect him. I think he's just very, very misguided. This is the wrong approach if you want to achieve anything politically in this country. It's the wrong approach if you want to bring people together. It's the wrong path because it's a dark path. It may seem like on the surface, like you're going to liberate people in some way by sharing the truth, but this is not truth. This is a very, very dark path. This takes you to a dangerous place where you're falling into a trap again of demonizing, dehumanizing a particular group of people again, pitting your people against a group of people, in this case, again, the Jews. And he openly states it. I then combine that with the symbol, and I mean, it's just, we're already halfway down the road and we've barely gotten started. So I really take issue with this. It's a hard no for me all the way across the board. No. Until we get to the free speech. And then I'm like, okay, you can say what you want to say, but I don't agree with you.
Well, do you remember the movie, The Blues Brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember the scene where the Illinois Nazis are out having their little parade and they're in the way. The Blues Brothers are just trying to get across the bridge, and these stupid Nazis are out there having their little march, and they had to stop traffic, right? The cops like, oh, you can't drive through here. You have to wait until the Illinois Nazis are done with their little parade. Yeah. And that was all a joke about the Skokie case, the famous Skokie case that the ACLU defended the American Nazi Party for their right to march and fly their flags and do all of that. It was a big case in 1978, 79. So the Blues Brothers came out about that time. And a lot of people who watched the movie today don't understand that the joke was about a famous legal case, the Skokie case.
Sure.
So I kind of get what Adrian's trying to do up there. He's trying to make this Canada's Skokie case, I guess. But I'm with Jake and Elwood. I hate Illinois Nazis, and I'm not a fan of Canadian Nazis.
Well,
either,
I don't
be
want to hate
honest.
on Adrian. I don't want to go to war with Adrian. I don't even really want to fight. Like, I don't want to fight with him. I want to have discussions. I want to have discussions like we had last night.
Well, let's have a discussion with our guest. He's been
yeah,
sitting
we're gonna
backstage for
do that.
15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, again, I really want to reinforce this. Adrian is not my enemy, nor are the people who are attacking me in the chat over the last 24 hours.
Well, you knew
they're
that
not
was
my
coming.
enemies. They might think that they need to be my enemy, but you're not my enemies. Okay. I believe in freedom. I believe in freedom of speech. I disagree on this issue. And I think the only constructive, positive way forward is to engage in discussion on these issues. And there, in that way, I think we might all be able to resolve these things in the long run.
Well, you did the right thing.
That's it.
I mean, you facilitated an open, fair, free discussion, and I think that discussion needs to be had. You know, and of course, you knew you'd be attacked. You'd be attacked on both sides. There'd be people coming to you saying, "Rick, how can you platform a Nazi?" And then there's other people coming to you saying, "He's not a Nazi. You don't understand your history." You know, blah blah blah. So you're going to get attacked no matter what you do. But the point is, it was courageous that you did that show last night, and I'm glad you did.
Well, I appreciate those words, Laurie, because I'll tell you, it's anytime I deal with this, it's a no-win situation for me. It's an absolute lose.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. Nobody's going to like a show like that.
Not
right?
really.
No
Nope.
matter what. And you can't make anybody happy when you do a controversial topic like that.
If you want to know how to not build, if you want to know how to destroy a YouTube channel, just
but
come
you know
talk
what?
to me. I'll show you.
You actually had a big audience for that show last night.
Yeah, for one night.
A lot of people, even though they hated the subject matter, they watched.
They did, yeah.
You know,
but
people love controversy, I guess.
But now but in the long run, it's not good. But nevertheless, I will continue to do that because these are conversations that have to be had. I don't know of anybody, very few other people. I don't know of anybody really that's doing what I'm doing. Nobody's as crazy as I am.
Where do you find these people, Rick Walker?
Well, I appreciate Adrian coming on
this week.
and having the discussion. Yeah. It's brave of him to come on and do it as well.
I guess they find you, right?
I'll tell you, I'm sure he got pushback as well, and a lot of people are saying, "What are you talking to that Rick Walker guy for?"
I'm sure.
No, so thank you, Adrian, for coming on and having the courage to talk to me too, man. And that's why, again, there's a big part of him that I actually like, and that's one of the reasons why, right there.
Well, you know, there's somebody I really like who's going to be joining us tonight for the episode 5 of Strange Bedfellows. Someone who's been a friend of mine literally since I was a kid. And boy, we've got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. So I hope you guys will stick around. And we're going to take a quick break, right? Come back and start this new show here on the Maverick News Channel. Or rather, we could say a return to the Maverick News Channel because Strange Bedfellows started right here before we moved over to Scott Ritter's channel for a month. While Scott was away in Russia, we kind of kept his time slot warm, and now we're back on the Maverick News Channel. Got an amazing show for you guys tonight. We're going to have a friendly debate between a big old Kennedy supporter like me and the biggest MAGA supporter that I know, Paul Davies. We're going to have a cage match and see between RFK Jr. and Trump who would win. We're going to have it out tonight on
Mega
Bedfellows.
Man.
Mega Man.
Yeah, the ultimate Trump supporter.
He is, folks, and I'm not joking. We'll show you why when we come back.
Okay, so I'm going to run a little promo, then we're going to run the intro to this new show. Stay tuned, folks. Straight ahead, Strange Bedfellows.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
That's a sweet new intro. All right. Welcome to Strange Bedfellows. Welcome, everybody. Obviously, you know me. I'm Lori Spencer, and you know Rick very well. And the idea of the show, if you didn't get a chance to catch our first 4 episodes over on the Scott Ritter channel, the idea of this show is to bring people together who would normally be on opposite sides of the political fence